I'm going to show you some special effects today on using alcohol with watercolor and scraping, salt and sand. I've got some regular, just denatured alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol works. You know, it's usually pretty darn cheap to use. Now I'm going to show you some special effects. This is a very light blue one, hard to see. So the blue was painted on, and then the alcohol dragged across. Same with this one. This was great little doodles and dots and scraping and pulling of alcohol. Basically, the alcohol seems to chase away. So this little green one here is the alcohol as well. So what alcohol tends to do is it tends to chase the paint away. So this square here, and I always like a good reveal. So I'm going to just paint this lovely blue on here. And while it's still rather wet, I will apply the alcohol. So I've got the alcohol in this little bowl here because I couldn't get my little syringe in the bottle. And you can watch what happens. See how you get this beautiful ring effect start to happen? And as it dries, you will get different effects. When it's super wet, you get one effect, and as it dries, you will get something else. So what I've used here is a granulating paint on top, which is ultramarine, and I can see the granulation rather sticking in there. So there's alcohol. Pretty easy to apply. You can use almost anything to apply it. I always hesitate to use something that may be a little caustic or drying on my brushes, so I don't. All right, there's alcohol. Get a bonus of effects. The next thing I'm going to show you is scraping. So what the heck is scraping? So I've got a color down. I'm going to put another color up down. On top of it, I've got, you know, a little old credit card, library card, plastic card, you know, usually easily found. You can cut them, make designs out of them. So make it a little thicker in some areas. And so then I can scrape with a whole side. I could scrape with a line. I can drag a line. I can totally get through to my other layers. So that's scraping using a credit card. Probably easy to do at this time. Wipe it down. Now the last thing I'm going to show you, salt and sand. So like anything, it all depends on how wet your surface is, right? How wet the water is, the pigment is that you put on top. What salt does is it seems to collect the paint around the surface. What salt does is that it tends to crystallize. And so I can show you an example. This is an example of sand. Hopefully that's in focus. You can see how the pigment is collecting around it. And here we have salt. See the dispersal of the paint and the crystallization that's happening. I've got many more beautiful ones. Here's a salt and a sand side by side. Salt and sand. Looks like a little bit of salt snuck over here. So I'm going to show you the application of it. And as I say, I always think that if you use 2 layers of color, it can turn out much better. Then you have a nice reveal. It's like double your money. All right. So I'm just testing my paint, make sure it's going to be good. I'm going to turn it sideways. First I'll do the sand. That's the easiest because it's not about crystal. It's not about something chemical happening. It's a physical thing that happens with the sand. There's my sand. And then clean up my little mess on the rest of it. There we go. So there's my sand. And ideally, I'm not going to move this at all after I clean up my little bits of mess here. I'm not going to do anything to this till this totally dries. All right, then let's do salt. Just using a, regular old table salt. And I'm going to coat this whole area with some paint, and it will dry in different ways, usually from the end up. But hopefully this will be the most wet, this section. And I will cover so I don't sprinkle everywhere. You can immediately see kind of what it's doing. Then my next section is a little drier till we almost get dry. The center tends to be drying the most. All right, then we're just going to leave this till it dries. Wanted to finish up with the special effects of using alcohol and scraping with a hard plastic card. And then I did the salt and the sand. So the salt and sand have definitely dried. Let me get off the sand. That can be a little easier the first time rather than the salt. Salt kind of sticks more. So then you have this beautiful pattern. Remember, with the sand, the pigment and the paint sticks around the sand. There is a little tiny light speck in the center, but it basically collects the material. And I'm doing this on top of a board because, you know what, I don't want to have salt and sand everywhere in my studio, and that's just what would happen. All right, just slight rubbing with clean hands. Of course, we're washing our hands all the time because we're working with paper. All right. So if you can see this, you can see the slight crystallization. So what happens is there's crystals, so where the light areas are, and it pushes the salt away. It's a nice at this edge. All depends on how much salt and what portion, when you put it on there. Again, there's still sand and salt everywhere. All right, you got to practice with this. This is not a cotton paper, so it didn't stay evenly wet at the same time. So next time I show this, I might show it on a cotton paper. Of course, the other examples I did show you were on cotton paper. Anyway, there's alcohol, scraping, sand, and salt in watercolor.